Hey, once again, I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. You would like to be under here doing this too. I get that. I really do. I get that. But not everybody can be under the car in the oil doing this. So we're going to do it. What we're going to do is we're going to change the rotors, okay, the disc brakes, as well as the rotors, the discs, on this F150 Ford. It's pretty much like any other vehicle, but I want to be a little more scientific with this video. I want to explain. I know you know how it works. You get it. You push the brake pedal in the car. It makes the pad do this thing, and it hits the disc, right, and it stops your car. It's magic. It's pixie dust. But anyway, it's not. It's not pixie dust. It's engineered. It's a lot more that goes on than you think. Pretty hot stuff, literally. But we'll get started here in just a minute. Thank you. And yes, you indeed are looking at a cross-drilled, slotted rotor disc that we're going to be replacing on the truck that we talked about just a few minutes ago. I like a Price is Right kind of thing, you know, kind of, yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? You know, you like it. Come on, you want to lick it, don't you? Lick it. Here, lick it. But anyway, we're going to replace it with these right here. These are rotors that were developed for more high-performance stopping. Race cars, a lot of those have these, and much better than these by far. These are not the top of the line, but they are cross-drilled. They're slotted. These slots right here tend to take the brake dust away, as the caliper, like this, applies pressure evenly to both sides of the rotor. As it turns, you know, you're going to create dust. Not the caliper turning, the rotor's turning like something like that going down the road. As it does, it's going to create dust. D-U-S-T, dust, not dusk, as in it's almost nighttime. But these slots right here, these drilled out slots right through here, they help take the dust away to help keep friction in its place. These holes, these dimples right here, also help dissipate, take the heat away from the point where the brake pad, whether it be metallic, ceramic, and we'll talk about the other chemicals, and the rotor, whether it be, most of these are made out of cast iron. There are some composites, there's carbon, there's the ceramic, and we'll talk about all of those and how they work, because each one, remember, this is metal, and brake pads are they're a semi-metallic, they're ceramic, there's all different flavors, but all of that is a material, and that material is going to wear, it's going to cause heat. When you're grabbing something this, you're doing 55 miles an hour, and you grab this pad, right, and you stop, just in normal wear and tear, they get hot, really hot. But we'll talk about more in just a moment. But these are 5 lug rotors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you can count. These have the race that's already pressed inside here, has already have that in there. I will repack the bearings on the Ford that we're going to be doing, and I'm also going to, in the back here, there is a seal or dust cover, some want to call it, that goes in here also. Very important. Got to have that in there because you're going to get a lot of dust and dirt inside there. You don't want to hear, or you're going to wear out this bearing that goes in here. And every so many miles, look at your manual, it's recommended. Every so many miles, you want to replace your bearings. Every so often, you may want to repack your bearings, especially if you're doing a lot of heavy towing. You go fishing, get in the water. Water gets inside your bearings. And there's grease, yes, but there's also water, and the two don't mix. But anyway, we'll talk about that more in just a little while. Here you see we've got our wheel off at the start. You see the rotor and the lug nuts. See a little bit of rust. Normal. You see the brake dust. This part right here is the caliper with the pad inside the caliper. This part right here. They will come with pistons inside of them, sometimes called pots. If you have a 2-pot caliper, you have 2 pistons. 6-pot caliper is going to be 6 pistons. The more pistons you got, the more evenly you're going to apply the brake pad pressure to the rotor, because that is very important as you want to brake, not just for stopping, but you want to brake without ruining the pads and or the rotors. And you see, of course, the lug nuts. We'll take the dust cover off in just a second. And over here, you will see inside the wheel, all the rotor and brake dust. Most of that is not from the pad. Most of that is from the rotor itself down in here. Most of this is actually from the rotor itself, metal that's came off, and this stuff here will actually ruin a rim if it's left on there a long time. But we'll get started here in just a second, and I'll come back. Now we're going to start by removing this nut, as well as another one that you can't see down here. This area here, 2 nuts. So we'll break those loose. They shouldn't be real tight. If they're real tight, that's a problem. And they should get fairly loose pretty quick. See, that's already loose. This thing right here, that's your bleeder. That's how you'll bleed brakes, by the way. This is your brake line. And as you follow this line up, you'll have the brake line, which will be going into the vehicle that you see right through here, into the vehicle up through there. That is leading up to the master cylinder, other controls that will be controlling ABS brakes and all that stuff. But for now, you just need to get these nuts right here off. So we get this nut here, the bolt back here off. Keeping it on all my bolts in this one cover right here. Put them all right here. And keep up with your tools. Remember, I don't like a messy shop and I don't like messy tools. If you don't get it cleaned up, get it cleaned up. Again, we're going to take this cover here off, and do this. You have a little clip here. It's just in a dimple. See the calipers are starting to come off, and do here. Same thing. The caliper is simply just going to pop right off. Okay, now you're going to have some pressure to relieve this piston right here. Now see what we have here. If you notice, this is the caliper. This is the piston, one piston right here. This piston applies pressure to these 2 pads that I have not taken off yet. There's 2 pads, this one here and this one here. The piston comes in. There's 2 types of cylinders, or calipers rather. There's a floating, and then there is a fixed caliper. One simply brings both in at the same time, like that, and one's going to push one side in and float the caliper over to the other side. They're not as well, the floating calipers, they're not as well, there are more issues, overheating and so forth, incorrect displacement of the heat. But we got this off, and I'm going to tie this up. What I like to do, I'm going to tie this thing here up. A lot of folks want to sit and let them dangle. I've seen car places do that. I don't like that because that puts pressure on your brake line. These are just aluminum brake lines. You can break them real easy. And I've seen a lot of car shops just leave them hanging. For you car shops out there, just know if you ever, which I doubt you will, do my brakes, don't leave my line hanging because I don't like it. So I'm going to leave this right here. Now everything is nice and neat out of my way. And there's no pressure, see, on this right here if you look up here. Quit looking down, look up. So right here is where I've tied it off. I went around my coil. And I got a Velcro strap. Simply tied it around this. This is aluminum, this line here. Break real easy. So I tied it right here off nice and neat. And we'll back out a little bit. And now we're going to show you about the rest of the caliper. Now we need to take our dust cover off here. I don't like using a screwdriver all the time, but very gingerly, just these don't need to be beat on. This is just very thin. Let's take this off right here. Just go around it. Let's see it when it starts to come off. All right, it comes right off. Now we have our key, our cotter key. I'm going to get some pliers. Take this. Notice now the play, or I call it play for term. See how this turns? This is not turning. I can tighten this up to where it does. I'm not going to use the pliers to do it, although some people would. Anyway, we're going to make sure when we put this back on later, I'm going to show you how you can get too tight here. But we'll take our cotter pin out here. Okay, so we'll get a hold of this. And that comes out. And this will simply come right off. Now we're down to the nut here. What I'm going to do here is get some. Now this is all the grease. You want this? Grease is good. Grease running out of a hub is not good, and I've done that too. That can happen. That sounds crazy, but that actually can happen. Even if a caliper sticks, that's what happened with me. If a caliper, this thing up here, sticks on the drum, it's going to be, you're going to feel resistance, of course, but it's going to wear your brake out. It's going to get hot. We're talking, 1,500, 2,000 degrees. Easy. Under normal wear, it's going to be real hot. So we're going to take this nut here off. Now I can tell you right now, so whoever did this last brake job, they probably used the incorrect socket, or they hit this nut here. I don't like seeing that, because when I see that, you're either in a hurry, using improper tools, or using improper technique. There is no fourth thing there. It's just those three. That's it. But let's go ahead and it's not going to be tight. See, it's loose now. But here is where the nut. See, I can just keep going and tighten until it can't go anymore. Now I go to the wheel. See, it's still turning. Now, as I put it on later, I'll show you how to do that. But we're going to take this nut off. That talking. All right. I'm going to be real careful right here and not let this fall out on you. Got a flat washer right in here, and you see that little jut that came out. That's going to be our bearing. Oops. Now I dropped that. I have a clean shop. You see my shop floor, but even still, I'll make sure it's thoroughly washed off. And I'm going to give this a tug. Sometimes the bearing's a little tight, and there we have, ladies and gentlemen, the bearing. You know you want to lick that. Lick it! No, I'm just kidding. You can't lick grease. Come on, what's wrong with you? But anyway, we have our bearing. I want to check this bearing for wear. Bearings they're not made like they used to, I'll tell you. Wow. Plastic. Whoa. Anyway, now we got the bearing out. We're ready to take the rotor off. So very gingerly here now. To take the rotor, it should come off very easily. And on the back here, you will see some interesting stuff here. So what we have here is a bearing, the dust cover, which is the outside. The race is already inside the new rotors that I'm getting. These are not just terrible, but they're thinner than I would like, but that's not horrible. And we'll talk about warped rotors in just a minute. There are some theories, some I agree, some I disagree about warped rotors. Is it really a warped rotor, or is it something else? We'll talk about that in just a minute. So I got our hub over here lying down on the bench here, and on the back side, we had the seal that was in there. This is this thing, the apparatus. It's right here. That's your seal. See, all the grease that's on it, and that was in with this other bearing that you see with the grease on it. And I'm leaving it on here for a reason. It was down in there. Goes over that, just taps in place very nicely, and I'll show you how to do that. So that comes out. There's a race right here. This is a race, called race. It's a pressed in type bearing that these rotors from the bearing are going to roll the outside roll, the OD we call it, or the OD, the outside diameter of the rotor. And each of those rollers will have its apex on the race. I know this is very, well, forget the technical jargon. It's going to roll around this here thing right here. So now, what I'm doing now is I want you to take a look in here. What I'm doing now is I done got my finger. There is no better feeling than grease on my finger. Look at that. But what I'm doing is I'm not just interested in grease, because I'm using new grease. Just like my last job, I told you, if you go this far and don't use something like new grease, you don't need working on cars. Because why would you do that, doing this kind of a job, and don't put new grease or the bearing? I'm going to put a new bearing in here. Bearing's not a big deal. You're riding on this thing. It's your life, and it's your kids and your wife's life. Get new bearings and put them in here. What I'm looking for in here, I'm looking to see down in here if there are any metal shavings, any kind of grit, wear. Later, we're going to mic. I'll get some calipers. We're going to mic different places inside of here, just to make sure what you saw over on the truck, it came off the spindle, the axle, you might call it, or the spindle in this case. It sits on top of that thing and just rides around on that thing. And it's kind of amazing if you think about it, how in the world do they not just break off? What happens is it rides on those bearings with the grease, and the grease gets hot, and but it's all regulated. It's engineered. So when we do this, we want to put stuff back. Notice this is the old rotor. If this is a new rotor, I would not be handling this surface right here with my hands at all, with or without gloves. No oil of any kind I don't want on this surface. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But I'm looking for grit, any kinds of signs of wear, any kind of metal. If I find a metal shaving in here, you're gonna find some dust, some brake dust. But if I find any kind of significant, and I mean significant, it don't take a lot at all. One fragment of metal, I'm stopping and I'm going further before I put this back on, because we got other problems. But that's what I'm doing. So we'll continue to look for that and get the stuff out. So we've got our back of our rotor. Here's our old rotor right here. Okay, we've got the new bearing put in place, and this is my grease. And what I'm going to do is put the lid back on my grease for now. I don't want any contaminants in that. I use these quite often, these rags, as clean as possible. And there's my hands. So, bearings in there, in the race, it's good. The next thing we need to do is we have to put on this seal dust cover. It's right here. As you can see, it has a rubber membrane right around here, and it's going to seal, and as well as this right here, the back of this here off. The way I like to do this, supposed to come in here and you get a hammer and just start beating away on it, just start wailing it, as we say down here. I use a wooden mallet, or a dead blow's fine. You can use a hammer if you're not so wild with it. You know, just kind of get it started here. Take my wooden hammer here, there. Now I'll take my bigger hammer. Let's tap that into better place. So this way you don't ruin the caliper or the brake set. So now, we have that all pressed in there. Now we're going to go there, put our bearing back in the wheel, put it back on, start putting everything back together. Before I start to put anything back together, I want to make sure I take this lid off. No contaminants around the lid. Get it off before we go. Very gingerly take this off right here, this cap right here off. It should lift right off. Okay, take it away. Don't hold it over the hole. You can get contaminant. I'll lay this right here for now. Notice my fluid level here. But I want to push, as I push the caliper in down there, it's going to want to push the fluid back through up the system ultimately right here. Now what will happen, if this is full, it's going to come out. But air will come back out here actually and exit this area here without sucking back air into the line, or else we'll have to bleed the brakes. Okay. So now I'm going to put this, here's my caliper. Remember I had it hanging here. I want to take this piston, this plunger here, and push it back that way. But what I'll do is take the old pad right here. I use this to push on so I can get even pressure on the caliper. And just using a C-clamp here. You can get, they make caliper compressors and all kinds of stuff. They'll sell you anything you want to buy. But this is doing the same thing. And you can even put uneven pressure even on this right here as I'm doing it. So I'm going to put pressure here. You might see it give way in just a minute. It's going back up in there. You can't see it probably, but it is. It's going back up in there. You don't want to just go all out and smash the daylights out of it. Just get your pads on. Typically these things, if they ever stick, by the way, these pistons, they usually will stick if the car has been left sitting unused outside in the weather. They will rust. The plunger, this caliper, the piston here, I keep saying caliper, this whole thing is the calipers. The plunger here, this piston, if it gets rusted on the outside, the part that's already actuated out, it's going to get rusty so it can't go back. So what happens is when you apply the brake pressure, it grabs. When you let off the brake, okay, the vacuum that the master cylinder and all the other vacuum stuff working together releases your brake pads from the rotor surface, or else it'd stay there. You never wondered why that. I've been asked this before, believe it or not, and it's okay. It's a good question. Why does the pads not release if you push them there? What makes them release? Well, it's the vacuum and the fluid working together. Hydraulic, pneumatic, they all are about the same way. So what I'm doing here, when they push out, they grab. If they can't go back because of rust, they'll stay there. So that's why they're sticking, and they're going to stay on the rotor, causing friction the entire time it's rotating. So you may go a few miles, and you'll smell something if you're not familiar. It'll get hot. The one that I had happen got so hot that the grease actually ran out of the hubcap and it blew out, but did not catch on fire. It probably should have. But anyway, got it pressed down here. I'm gonna put my 2 brake pads in here.